we've been around since the late 1980s, and we originally started with our charter was to locate and develop a trail that circumnavigated Mount Shasta. If you've ever been up like to Mount Rainier National Park, you've seen, the Wonderland Trail that does the same thing for that volcanic mountain in the Cascade Range, and we always thought it would be a great thing to have a similar type of trail for Mount Shasta. Well, if you know anything about trails on Mount Shasta, there is no trail that circumnavigates the mountain. It became an impossible task with some of the canyons, such as Mud Creek, that come off it, in terms of water supplies for camping, things like that. So the Mount Shasta Trail Association, we morphed into just a general trail advocacy group for southern Siskiyou County and northern Shasta County. Here's an example of one of the trails that we manage, the Gateway Trail, that we built this trail back in 2011. It's just adjacent to the community of Mount Shasta. We were able to develop this trail with a grant, the Recreational Trails Program grant that was federal money administered by California State Parks. The niche for the Mount Shasta Trail Association is what I like to call trails in the wildland-urban interface. That's kind of a concept that arose in the fire management community of those houses that are kind of scattered at the edge of a suburban area, usually in the forest or some kind of wildland. Well, that's our niche for trail development. We're really not an urban trail group, and neither are we a trail group that goes out in the far hinterlands into a wilderness or backcountry area. What we're looking for is those trails just on the edge of the community where a person can walk or ride or run from their home, get out to the trailhead and have a great experience. However, that being said about our niche, we will work on any trail, any place. So an example is working out on a 8-foot wide paved trail in the city of Mount Shasta that will connect our city park to the downtown. And we also have worked on trails in the backcountry area. But again, our niche is more of that interface. We're also a non-motorized trail advocacy group. And so our users and our members, they're runners, hikers, equestrians, mountain bikers, folks like that. That's our niche. Here's an example of some of the work we've done on the Gateway Trail that I mentioned before. This is a Youth Conservation Corps group out of the Mount Shasta Ranger District, putting down bark where we had planted native plants in the trailhead area. So I talked about we were founded in the late 80s. We have about 100 members, and we're an all-volunteer group. We have no paid staff. However, the one thing that we do is we always look for partners or people in the community that can help us out. And an example of that would be that we do hire folks to write grants for us or administer grants. And so that's a key thing for an all-volunteer group is to find those skills when you need them, either in another organization, an agency, or just individuals that can bring those skills to your group. One thing also we do as a trail organization is we lead hikes throughout the summer. And here's a group of our members hiking up to the top of Mount Eddy. Here's our official mission statement, where we provide inspiring trail experiences, appreciation of the Mount Shasta area, and advocate environmentally sound stewardship by creating, maintaining, protecting, and using trails in the Mount Shasta area. We feel that trails are a great way to connect with your environment, but also just a great way to kind of reinvent yourself at certain points of time. In the theaters right now is a movie called Wild, about a book written by an author, Cheryl Strayed, about how she used hiking the Pacific Crest Trail to turn her life around. And we feel that connection to trails as a trail advocacy group. Here's another photo of the Gateway Trail. The Gateway Trail, it's a multi-use trail for both hiking, biking, and running. And here we have a group out working on bank turns for the mountain bikes. It turns out when you have that speed built up, that the bank turns really help you negotiate that curve much better than just a flat trail. But as a multi-use trail advocacy group, we always want to make sure that when we put in a bank turn like this, it's still okay for the people that are riding a horse or walking, and that it's not just a single-use type trail construction. Some of the major projects we've worked on over the years have been the Cabin Creek Trail, which is along Squaw Valley Creek, just outside of McLeod. The Spring Hill Trail, which is a little volcanic nub to the north of Mount Shasta. That is a good urban interface trail. It's on land that is owned by the Crystal Geyser Company, and they've allowed us to put a trail on that and maintain it for community use. The Box Canyon Trail, which is right below the dam for Lake Siskiyou, parallels the Sacramento River, going down about a mile, where you can get some fairly good views of the river. The Lake Siskiyou Trail, this is one of our major early projects, and it's about an 8-mile trail that goes around Lake Siskiyou. And it's a nice, gentle trail, good for mountain bikes, good for running, good for hiking. And for a while we had a problem with how do we get across the Sacramento River as it comes into Lake Siskiyou. And working with Siskiyou County, who's the landowner for Lake Siskiyou, we came up with a novel solution of these temporary aluminum bridges. And the Sacramento River is braided as it comes into the lake, and so what it takes is about 4 of these aluminum bridges that are put up on a temporary basis to get people across the delta. So during the summer months, you can get around the whole lake. During the winter months, we pull up those bridges so that they're not washed out by the high flows. The Gateway Trail, I've been showing a lot of photos of that. That's one of our more recent trails, and that's located on National Forest lands just outside of Mount Shasta. Again, we were able to build that with an RTP grant. And again, being right on the edge of the community of Mount Shasta, it gets a lot of use from people just coming out of the neighborhoods there. And our latest project is the Shasta East Bike Park. And there, what we're doing is we're trying to build a bike park that includes a skills course, a flow trail, where we can help young people develop the skills for mountain biking and then be able to use those as they go out on trails that are more challenging. Also in the community of Mount Shasta, we had a problem of a lot of young people going out onto the National Forest and building illegal trails, dragging lumber and plywood out there to make jumps and bumps and things. And we feel that by having this organized bike park in the community, that we can kind of focus some of that energy on something that does provide the challenge, but it's in more of a controlled environment, as opposed to just these bootleg things built out in the woods that Forest Service rangers end up having to go out and clean up every once in a while. There's a conceptual diagram of the flow trail portion of the bike park. We did some work on it last summer, and this spring we're going to try to get it completely fixed up and ready for a grand opening. As a nonprofit organization, we find that we can never do any of our projects alone, so we're always looking for some other partner. And we have many more partners than the logos I put up here, but some that I'll just do a shout out to is the bikeshasta.org, which is a local chapter of the International Mountain Biking Association, or IMBA. Working with Bike Shasta, we've been maintaining the Gateway Trail, the Shasta East Bike Park, and officers of that organization have helped us get grants. Next is California State Parks, where Castle Crags, which is right in our neighborhood, it was one of those parks that was slated for closure when the state park budgets were looking so poor. And through a donor match grant we made to Castle Crags, we've been able to help them hire seasonal rangers, do some trail maintenance, and buy some supplies. So in many ways, it's a local park unit that we've adopted, and they reciprocate that as a good partner. The Sisson Museum is right there by the fish hatchery in Mount Shasta, and on their grounds is the Elsa Rupp Trail, which is a nice short urban trail for viewing cold waters that are used for fish hatchery development and loop interpretation. And then the last logo I put up here is for the Siskiyou Land Trust. A lot of times we find in developing a trail project that there may be a need to own a piece of land or have an easement or some kind of agreement with the landowner. And we luckily have the Siskiyou Land Trust to turn to as the expert in that type of work. So a recent example is we bought a chunk of land along what's called the Mount Shasta Greenway, or that City Park Downtown Trail. And there was a consortium of member organizations that put up the money to buy the parcel, and the Siskiyou Land Trust is holding the title to that. Another example is, I talked about the Spring Hill Trail, which is on Crystal Geyser property. And the Siskiyou Land Trust, they hold the easement for that trail and trailhead. As a trails group, we felt the need to really kind of jumpstart our trail building process and get a vision that we could shoot for. So back in 2012, 2013, we got a nice grant from the Shasta Regional Community Foundation to do some trail planning. So what we did was essentially draw about a 20-mile diameter circle around Mount Shasta and said, within that circle area, what kind of trails could be developed. We subcontracted this planning process to the International Mountain Bike Association, or IMBA, and so they came to the Mount Shasta community and interviewed a lot of the movers and shakers, community officials, land management agencies such as the Forest Service, and kind of pick their brains as to what might be a good location for a trail. We were able to wrap up this conceptual trails plan in November of 2013. So what came out of this conceptual trails plan is what we're calling the 100 Miles of Trail campaign. So what our goal is, working with our partner organizations, is to build an additional 100 miles of trail, again on the outskirts in that urban interface zone of Mount Shasta and adjoining communities. What we want to do is transform the Mount Shasta area into a world-class trails destination. IMBA has different standards of being a mountain bike destination, and you might have heard of some of the places that have done that, like I think in Lake Tahoe area, there's some IMBA sponsored trail destinations. I know when we look up in Oregon, the Portland area is another one. So that's what we would like to be in terms of Mount Shasta. So we want to add 100 miles of multi-use trails. We'd like to see Shasta Park as kind of a central hub and staging area for a lot of these trails. And we want to be able to link the communities of McLeod, Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, and Weed. One experience I had a number of years back was a chance to go to Europe and hike what's called the Tour de Mont Blanc, which is about a 120-mile trail that circumnavigates Mont Blanc, where Italy, France, and Switzerland all come together. And the really nice part of that experience of a 10-day hike was, you get up in the morning in some B&B and have a nice breakfast, a European breakfast, and just walk to the edge of that community and walk through forest or fields or whatever for the full day, and then you'd arrive at another village or community, and and have a similar lodging, and the way all those communities were linked by trails. And I'd love to see that in the southern Siskiyou County area. Here's a mountain biker enjoying our Gateway Trail. So this is kind of encapsulates, what we're all about is that enjoyment of a trail on the outskirts of our community. Some of the outcomes of our 100 Miles of Trail campaign is just to improve that quality of life and health, and also the economy. We hope to attract, when all these 100 miles are built, 50,000 trail users per year. We hope to generate about $1 million of economic impact for our local businesses. And we hope to just increase the exercise and health of our community by 50%. It's kind of like, if you build it, they will come. And so we see that in terms of trails. If we can provide those trails in our community, we know they will be used. So here was an article in the Reading Record Searchlight recently about our blazing of new trails. And just a few slides, you really probably can't see it very well, but when we talk about the 100 miles of trails, it's broken up into 5 different areas. And so this is one that we call the Shasta-Dunsmuir Link Trail that will go from Highway 89 to Snowman's Hill down to the Dunsmuir-Mott Airport area. And what's unique about this portion of our 100 Miles of Trail campaign is that it's completely on land owned and managed by the Roseburg Timber Company. And they've already done the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, process for this trail when they were doing a timber harvest plan in that area. So we have the green light to build this. All we need to do is locate it on the ground and find the money to build it. Another trail we're looking at as part of the campaign is one that would connect, let's see, I need to look at this closer. Okay, that would connect the Lake Siskiyou area to the Sisson-Callahan Trail. And this would be primarily on national forest land. And one of our challenges is that when dealing with federal lands, typically the level of environmental compliance is higher. So that's one reason why we need to do our fundraising, get grants, and find those people that are skilled in environmental analysis. This map here shows an expansion of the Gateway Trail system. And so the trail we built is about 7 miles of trail just northeast of Mount Shasta. And we'd like to expand it going up towards McBride Springs and also towards the ski park. I know some summers the ski park has had a mountain bike program where you can take your mountain bike up on a ski lift. Unfortunately, with these drought years, they haven't been able to do that recently, but maybe they could pick that back up. And here, this last map shows an expansion of trails in the Sisson-Callahan area. Actually, the prior map I said Sisson-Callahan was really towards Castle Lake. But again, we're using Lake Siskiyou kind of as a focal point for trails that would radiate out from that. And these trails would also be on national forest. And here's a close-up of the Gateway Trails. I think that's my last slide. Oh, no, one more. This is near Dunsmuir, right? This would be a close-up of the ski park. There's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up on the Trails panel, I'd like to introduce Terry Hansen. He is on the board of it's called the American Trails Association, and they're actually located right here in Palisadro, near Reading, but it's a national organization that provides a lot of resources for trails and a lot of expertise. Terry has over 35 years of experience planning, designing, and building trails, and he's really a vision and person who made it happen with the Sacramento River Trail. And so we're very excited to have him here. And by the way, Terry will be leading a walking tour tomorrow at 11:30 touring Trailway East and a new trail extension that's under construction, an environmental restoration project, and increased public access, a huge project over there. It should be really interesting. Welcome, Terry.
Well, thank you. I wanted to first say that it's been my pleasure to serve as a City of Reading staff person for several decades, and also on the board of American Trails for the last 15 years. In those roles, I've been asked many times from people around the country, what does it take to develop a successful trail system? And the primary answer that I've always provided is that it takes a commitment from a community, a long-term commitment. These things don't happen overnight, and the success and the benefits of your endeavors don't happen for decades. So if it's something you're interested in another community, please keep that in mind. It does take a very long time. There are several points that are important to talk about in terms of developing a successful trail system, and I think the first one is to have a committed city council. The fact that Missy is here today with us demonstrates that the current council is committed, and I can tell you from my experience that most of our past councils have been very committed and have done a lot towards implementing the necessary policies and improvements that are required for our trail system. The other thing I'd like to talk about is partnerships. We do have very significant successful partnerships in Reading. We've had partnerships with the Bureau of Land Management for decades, partnerships with the McConnell Foundation, with community service groups like Rotary, and with other agencies regionally like Shasta County and Caltrans. Those are very, very important in developing a very successful system of trails. The other issue, of course, is dedicated staff. We've had dedicated staff for a very long time in many aspects of local government, and they've done a lot to advance our system of trails and our river parkway. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the concept of hope. You may take a long time to develop what you're looking for, but you have to continue to hope, and that is to hope for a continued commitment by your community, by your council, and by the volunteers in your community. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions. Yes?
What would you say are the biggest factors contributing to it taking so long to develop?
Well, for one thing, we have 12 miles of river through the city of Reading, so it's a very large system. We're also adjoining thousands of acres of national lands owned by the BLM and the National Park Service, and even the Forest Service. That process and that partnership takes decades. And finally, it's taking fruit. We have a couple 100 miles of trails that connect you to Shasta Dam, to the National Park at Whiskeytown, and to BLM lands on the west side of Reading. Yes?
Terry, I guess my question would be directed toward you and Missy. Director Searchlight had a rather startling report last weekend about the safety of the Sacramento River Trail and some of the documented crimes, increases and so forth. And I was wondering if you could comment on that and what you think could be done immediately to reassure the public that these system trails are safe to use.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I am retired, and I don't have much influence over police matters, but I will tell you that it's probably a long time coming. The city of Sacramento has been dealing with this for the last 25 years. And I think what probably you've noticed in the last 4 or 5 years has a lot to do with the state of California being mandated to release prisoners. I know that's kind of a simplistic view, but that combined with our recession probably has compounded the issue of homelessness. And of course our open spaces are vast, and in the past they've been easy to hide in. And so that has contributed to folks of need finding places to stay in our open space. And as far as the crime rate, I'm not the police chief and I don't have the statistics, but I can tell you there's a concern because we see more of what we think is risky behavior, but I'm not sure the statistics are generally higher, alarmingly higher than they have been in the past.
And I would just say that we have recently hired new code enforcement people to help with that problem, and that the police chief is actually going to have patrols that are on the water, he hopes soon, if he can get some boats going. And from the water side, identify some of these camps and move them out. And I also want to acknowledge our mayor is back there in the corner. Francie, would you just wave to everybody so that you realize that it isn't just me that's very committed and involved in trails and stuff in the council. We all are. Yes, sir.
John Livingston, I'm a long-term resident of Reading. I walk the river trail from the bridge up the Huff and Puff Hill, across the freeway, down Hilltop, and then down 44 Bridge. And about a year ago, some remote cameras were put in under the, near the 44 off-ramp, you know where I'm talking about. So my question, one of my questions is, have the remote cameras on the river trail under the I-5 off-ramp resulted in any of the graffiti people being caught and prosecuted? Or have they basically, they're kind of a deterrent, but they really haven't resulted in any arrests or citations?
Actually, they are a good deterrent, and they have caused some decreased activity in terms of graffiti at that particular site. Those cameras actually work. We do have some cameras that are faux, that to kind of keep the bad guys on their toes, but those are actual real cameras.
I do work in the river corridor every day almost, and I have noticed a significant increase in the police presence and a different tone among the homeless and the campers. It's gotten quite a bit better in the last few months.
And we do want to differentiate between homeless and transients and people who have chosen a certain lifestyle.
Sure. Can I
Okay.
ask another couple questions about the river trail?
Sure.
Okay. In this same area, especially under I-5, which I understand the trail under I-5 is Caltrans's trail, but the rest of the trail maintenance is the city of Reading. But that's what I was told by some Caltrans people. But under the I-5 bridge there, the trash and the glass and the is just terrible. And instead of, I don't know how frequently, I'm sure it's a huge pain to vacuum up the glass, but kids will hang out over there and do all sorts of things, and a lot of homeless do because it's shady and out of the rain, of course. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but that needs to be regularly cleaned up, and it needs to be pressure washed off once in a while. I'll quit that, and that's enough.
Actually, I would point out that part of the trail system is the city of Reading's maintenance responsibility. Even though it's Caltrans right of way, the city accepted the maintenance responsibility.
And I would like to say that we have right now one officer who's in charge of some of the AB 109ers that, or other court-related types that have to come out and do some community service. And we're trying to get ahead of that. We're about to hire a couple more to do the same kind of thing because it's a definite issue. Some friends of mine in the audience and I were out cleaning the Henderson open space on Wednesday, and there was a syringe that was capped and everything. It looked like, I couldn't tell if it had been used or not. I didn't look very close. But there were other types of paraphernalia that we definitely don't want our children coming across. And Francie, I'd invite you up. There's another fourth chair so that you can get in on this fun. Don't we have any questions for Siskiyou County? Bruce.
I actually do have a question for the gentleman from Siskiyou County. I've heard, you mentioned that a lot of your trails have been built from grants from the Recreational Trails Program I understand correctly, has been sort of folded into broader active transportation programs. I've heard particularly from people who develop trails in rural areas that it's very difficult to compete for the funding for those. I'd be curious if that's been your experience in California.
Yeah, when we applied for the RTP, or Recreational Trails Program grant, at that time it was administered by California State Parks, and even though it was federal monies, and so the requirements to meet the criteria were fairly stringent in terms of we had to have compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, and under that umbrella there had to be archaeology, endangered species surveys, things like that done. And at the time that was being done, Priscilla Franco, who's sitting over here, was a district ranger for the Mount Shasta district. And even though it was an off-budget item, her staff ended up spending about $100,000 worth of staff time to do that environmental compliance for that RTP grant. So it's a pretty good hoop to jump through just to be able to qualify. And the grant itself, we received about $100,000 to build 7 miles of trail and a trailhead. Now, more recently, it's my understanding that the RTP program is now going to be administered by Caltrans. I think it was kind of part of those things that state parks kind of got in trouble with that hidden monies, and so Governor Brown turned that program over to Caltrans. And since that time, we've not yet applied for any additional RTP grants, so we're looking at that for this fiscal year to give that a try.
For John, could you comment on the Rails to Trail project from Bernie to McLeod?
Yeah, that is known as the Great Shasta Rail Trail, which is a Rails to Trails conversion of what was the McLeod River Railroad that basically served the timber industry when there were active sawmills in McLeod and Bernie. And there's a process by which a railroad line is abandoned, and the Federal Surface Transportation Board allows that linear right-of-way to be converted to a trail, but they want to preserve that right-of-way should at some time in the future there be a need for a railroad again. So that's kind of the beauty of the Rails to Trails conversion, is that swath of land is still kept intact instead of being split out amongst a bunch of different owners. And so the Great Shasta Rail Trail Association is a fairly new nonprofit in our area, with board members from McLeod, Bernie, Susanville, those areas, and they're working on acquiring that corridor and developing it as a rail trail, or as a rail trail. Now, unfortunately, that trail starts 3 miles east of the town of McLeod, and then goes to Bernie, and there's a spur line called the Hambone Spur that goes up kind of to the woods there. Our local communities, we'd love to see that rail to trails conversion include that 3 miles from Pilgrim Creek into the town of McLeod, but also include from the town of McLeod to the town of Mount Shasta, because we think that would be the most attractive type of trail. And we think it's just a matter of time before that is officially abandoned and the ties and rails are removed. And I think, again, the Great Shasta Rail Trail Association will be the lead nonprofit for the management of that. One thing I would point out is that the Shasta Land Trust is very active in this Rails to Trails conversion. And I think, when the transfer of property is made, they'll be the original owner of that railroad right-of-way, and then it'll eventually be transferred to the Great Shasta Rail Trail Association. So, yeah, there's a lot of movement being made, but there's a lot of things in the future we're looking forward to where we have a trail from the city of Mount Shasta all the way to Bernie.
This is maybe more secretary, but perhaps for all three of you, your vision of what you see for our trails systems in the
The community, in cooperation and partnership with entities like the Bureau of Land Management and Forest Service, Shasta County, they've established quite a vision in master planning for 60 miles of river corridor between Shasta Dam and the city of Red Bluff. Those visions are articulated for the city of Reading, it's in the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan. And for the Bureau of Land Management, Bill, would you like to say what the names of the 3 plans are? You have the Inner Lakes Plan, you have the plan for the Bend area, and then I think there's one other.
Well, we're working on a new resource management plan, which may have some effect on other lands, other things that we will be focusing on. But I think you're talking about the 2 plans that really have made a difference. And at this time, we already have the Yana Trail, which pretty much follows the Bend, Sacramento Bend area, CLM lands through that area. So we just have to connect the south and north end up to Reading and then down to Red Bluff.
So the plans we just mentioned cover about 60 miles of river frontage, and they cover about 80,000 acres of public lands. So it's no small venture to try to master plan all of those, but they are available. They are public documents, and you can certainly get copies of them. Yes.
On JPR AM this morning, there was a discussion of the Bigfoot Trail running from way south of here to way north of here, and I'm wondering if that's tied in with any of these master plans. It's kind of new to me.
I've never heard of it, sorry.
Thank you.
Putting on my American Trails Board hat, I would like to invite all of you to attend the International Trails Symposium in Portland, Oregon on May 17th through the 20th. It'll be a great opportunity to find out what other communities are doing about trail systems and learn some new